We've got this great idea to try something slightly more structure to our call this week and see if it carries forward. Um, so instead of like diving straight into the conversation, one of the reasons we do this live stream is to record our conversations and involve more people in our conversations. So there's a couple of things, but it is also to further conversational leadership. So, especially for people that have never heard of conversational leadership or need a refresher on what it is, we thought we would add this little light structure of start the call just for a minute or two, short as we can. My hunch is that every week our definition of conversational leadership might slightly tweak. Um, but
Absolutely.
each week start with, okay, what's this week's definition of conversational leadership? See if it changed at all. Then have a quick chat, and then at the end close with one more question, which is, okay, given that conversation we just had, did we succeed? Did we advance conversational leadership in any way? And talk about it for a second. So over to you first, David. What is your this week's definition of conversational leadership?
Okie dokie. My definitions are usually quite short, but I sat down and I've never been happy with them. We've tweaked them over the years now, several times, you and I. So I sat down and I wrote something a little bit longer. And I'm going to cheat here. I've got it. I've got it on the screen in front of me. I'm going to read it, and because I think it'll change, but I think it covers pretty much my view of it. So this is what I say. I say conversational leadership is the practice of taking responsibility for the problems and opportunities we see by initiating and nurturing the conversations that might not otherwise happen.
Mm,
You know where that comes from. That's
I
the
do.
short quote, which we
Yep.
both love. It's about choosing to lead, not through answers or authority, but by creating the conditions for dialogue, reflection, and collective sense making, especially in complex or uncertain environments. As you can see, this is a long definition. This approach to leadership values participation over control, curiosity over certainty, and sees conversation as the medium through which meaning is made, trust is built, and action becomes possible. You'll also realize that I had a little bit of help with ChatGPT here. At its core, conversational leadership is about showing up with intention, inviting others in, and helping shape the conversations that in turn shape our future. Wow.
There's a
What
lot
do you,
there.
what
Yeah.
do you reckon? What do you reckon?
I want to maybe just to be completely different. Since I knew that question was going to pop up, I've been trying to think about it, and we've got that book we wrote, so I almost wanted to pull the book off the shelf and read what did we put in the book.
Mm,
Um, if I go the complete opposite direction and just try to
yeah,
simplify it
go
down to
on.
one word,
One
I
word.
think the one that was closest for me in your definition was intention. Really
Mhm.
close. If I had one word, I would I think you can predict my word. Awareness.
Yeah, I don't have that word.
That word's not in there, and to me, if I way oversimplified my current definition just for today of conversational leadership, it's something about uh, expanding, deepening, heightening, raising your awareness of what you contribute in conversations, what others contribute, the impact of those contributions, the the dynamics of the conversation, the process of the conversation, the impact of the conversation. It's that sort of seeing, hearing, feeling awareness of this is what's going on in the conversational aspects of our relationship.
Okay, I love this, John. Um, what I'm going to do for next time, for next week, I'm going to take the awareness and I'm going to fold it into my definition and try not to lengthen it.
Okay. All
But
right. So there you go.
no, look, while we're on this, I think we should stick with this and spend a little bit longer time because we haven't
Okay.
had a conversation for a while, even if we don't talk about what we plan to talk about.
Okay.
Um, the big difference between your definition and mine is yours was very much about conversation. It's very conversationally focused. And mine starts off about taking responsibility for the problems and opportunities we see, as I say, and nurturing conversations that might not otherwise happen. So I'm seeing the conversations as a means towards a particular end. And I think you see it in a somewhat narrower sense that it's just about the conversation.
Yes and no. I find, especially if you're brand new to conversational leadership, I just find that an easier front door.
Yeah,
But you're right. If I tried to oversimplify it to one word like awareness, yeah, what I didn't get a chance to say is, and I'm a big fan of what's that word that we were taught? Discourse. It's like the aggregate conversation. The ones that for me I feel a bit helpless. I feel like they're way bigger than any one person. That kind and yet I do have that belief that like every single conversation, every single person, every single day is contributing to the bigger conversation, and that to me is a big part of that awareness. Sort of not throwing away every conversation you're a part of, seeing that actually this is contributing, even though it feels like there's only two of us. This is obviously a great example now of we're out in the world for others to see it. But even if we weren't streaming live, you and I chatting privately has an impact. It has a ripple
exactly.
of
Yes.
what goes on. And yeah, I would
Each
include
and
that in there.
every, whatever it is, 8 billion of us these days are part of that. It's often called the great conversation. It's the conversation that's been going on since somebody sitting around the campfire invented conversation.
Mm,
Maybe some of our great ancestors, John, we were sitting around the campfire and we said, hey, maybe we should have a conversation about something. And hey, conversation was invented just like that.
yep.
It's kind of interesting because it's something I'm looking at, and that's what I call it sort of the history and philosophy of conversation. And I'm just doing a little bit of thinking and research and going back. If you think about it, we language evolved initially from sort of grunts and gestures, and I guess very simple words, if you like, or simple sounds to communicate intent. But at some point, conversation emerged out of all of that. And then, we had the early civilizations out in Mesopotamia. Um, and to have built the civilizations that they did, they really must have sat down and had proper conversations. But that's all lost. I guess most of it is lost in prehistory. But it's that was the start of the great conversation, or that was the start of what might be called today sort of public discourse.
Yep. The bigger conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe tell me if you like this now or not, but the question, if that was like the top and tail, the what's
Yeah,
our working definition,
it
and
was a
then
rather long top.
it's fine. The question we thought about for today was the framework. We've got this
The
conversational leadership
framework,
framework that,
a dreaded framework.
right, and there's parts that we like and there's parts that we don't like, and I think we agree, but maybe that's my first part of the framework question is we've got this conversational leadership framework. It doesn't encompass all of conversational leadership. We feel like there's things missing. We've talked about a second or a third framework and they all work together. But I think we've even talked about maybe the notion of a framework is not a good idea. Like it's never going to work. You can't ever quite encapsulate in a framework. But what I guess my question is what's missing from the framework, which
I would,
probably
I
requires
would
us
step
talking
back
about
and,
it.
well, there's two things. First of all, let's step back and say, what's the purpose of the framework,
Sure.
which maybe we haven't, I think we've talked about in the past, but maybe not agreed on. And what's missing, again, I think the framework is a little bit too conversation centric for my mind. And as you say, I don't think it certainly doesn't capture everything. But I mean, having said all of that, um, I don't have anything better. And we've been talking about this now for ever since you sat in this room all those years ago and we first talked about it.
Yep,
And that must be at least 5 years ago.
at least.
So, what's the purpose of having a framework?
Well, if I jump in there, I actually sort of thought about this, and I don't know that it's great language, but my words are sometimes I appreciate frameworks for getting my head wrapped around something.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. Like I kind of want to see. and maybe it's just me, but I kind of like to see a big picture. I kind of like to see the big, messy everything, and then kind of break down into tell me more about this and more about this. And oh, you've got these two elements here. How do those two interrelate? So it in a way it's for understanding, it's for boundaries or focus areas. Um, and funny enough, it's a little bit for sparking conversation.
Yeah.
It's a little bit for, hey, right now we're talking about conversational leadership, but if we were talking about some other thing, here's the framework for that thing.
Yeah.
Okay, let's
It's the
talk like the framework
categories,
sparks it.
it's the categories, it's the tags, it's the boxes, if you like, to kind
Yeah.
of put things in some structured sort of way. It's like trying to have a neat um a neat bookshelf with all the books nicely categorized in some way. And it is extremely useful. But you just when you're talking about that, and I was thinking, okay, nice neat structure to kind of look at conversational leadership. I was thinking, well, actually, no. Conversational leadership is is complex. Sorry,
Hmm.
conversation is complex,
Hmm.
and so maybe it doesn't fit in nice neat boxes. So maybe we are um, tilting at windmills, as they say. But it then occurred to me, I've written something in the past where I've looked at Dave Snowden's Cynefin framework and related that to conversation. So, you've got your simple domain where you're kind of maybe giving orders, or asking very simple questions, where should we go for dinner? It's the simple domain. You've got the more complex domain, so not the complex, the complicated domain. I'm not going to give examples, but where the conversation's a little bit more, there's answers and things to the questions, but it's just a little bit more complicated. And then you've got the complex domain, which is really where the sort of conversations we're talking about lie. And then there's chaos, and that's when you're maybe having an argument with your with your spouse, because the whole idea then is to get it out of chaos and back into complexity if you can. Or better still, stop it all together. Um, so that's one way of looking at conversation through the lens of the Cynefin framework. But I think what we said before is that maybe there are different frameworks that serve different purposes.
Yeah.
And that's one framework. And then, of course, the framework, I mean, fundamentally, that you put together more than I did. Okay, we started off in this room all those years ago, and then you really picked up and run with it. And I was less involved in the development of that. Um, there's a lot I like about it. Um, and there's a lot I don't like about it, which I can't particularly articulate. It just doesn't feel quite right. It doesn't, to me, sort of feel to capture the essence of that definition I gave at the beginning.
Yep. I think for me, I don't know, my thinking in the moment is almost like we need three frameworks as a step towards one framework, or even as a step towards, I think what we're both saying, no framework at all, some other thing. But if we just continue down that path, which is again kind of to me the whole purpose of this stream is to keep advancing. Um, the two frameworks that I'm aware top of mind that I already know is the one with the egg, as we've called it,
Yeah.
um, where it's got what purpose, conversational in the center. Well, no, around the outside, it's got conversational purpose, conversational context, conversational design, and conversational enablers, and then like a question to help people think about those. And then is it in the center? I think it is where it's got use of self and communityship
Mhm.
and right, and so that's basically the one model we're talking about. The other one, and that is, you're right, it's a little over focused on like the conversation you're in right now. What are those four things and what are the two things? Although I would say use of self and communityship are a little bit bigger. They're bigger than the conversation you're involved in. They carry on.
They are, yes.
The other framework I'm thinking about that we never really talk about is came out of one situation I found myself in, and then I just documented it and talked to others about it. It's absolutely conversational, like single conversation, and I would say it's even more fundamental than that. It's about as an individual, can you slow down? And I don't have it memorized, but there's five or six things that I was like, this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. And if you go really slow, I think that cycle, I draw it like that, like a circle, I think it happens in a microsecond. But if you can catch it and like see each one of those things, I think it helps you be more authentic. I don't like that word. Genuine, real, raw. I don't know. It helps you be
Mhm.
you in every single moment. So if there's like a really detailed me in this moment microsecond framework, then there's a conversational like what's the conversation? I think the framework that we've never really talked about or ever even drafted that I could think of is like again the discourse, the throw away the individual conversations and now let's talk
Bigger
about
conversation.
millions of conversations. What does that framework look like? I don't think we've ever done that.
No, we haven't. It just two things occurred to me there. We've got the egg, and I suddenly had a vision of a nest with
Okay.
with several eggs,
All right.
and maybe a mother hen. Oh, maybe we're the mother hens, nurturing our chicks, nurturing the
All
eggs.
right.
But
All
the
right.
idea of several eggs. Um, so that was just a little bit of mental fun. Um, what was the other point I wanted to make? You know what we haven't done? We haven't asked ChatGPT what it thinks.
Yeah. Could even give it the two frameworks and
We
yeah.
could even give it the egg because it's got the ability to analyze drawings and schematics now. And say,
I
here,
saw something. This is a little bit off topic, but I think you'll like it. The newest thing I've seen in ChatGPT happened yesterday. Um, I was on a call and we were using a whiteboard, um, website, and people were drawing sticky notes and drawing arrows and connections, and it was all very visual. Um, And then you can take like a screenshot and you can put the screenshot through ChatGPT. But
yeah,
this particular application had JSON code, if you're familiar with JSON.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and so, you just click a button, it gives you that JSON code. And in the code, it describes physically where everything was on screen and all the arrows and relation. So it basically is like a text version of the visual depiction, best you can do. You can
Oh,
take the JSON code and run that through ChatGPT and say, analyze this visual map. And it was really interesting to see what it did with it.
it's getting very sophisticated and almost impossible to keep up with these days.
Yeah.
I think we should just stick to plain old conversation, don't you?
Okay, sure. Just chat. All right. So watching the clock, we should probably wrap in a minute.
We should probably wrap in a minute, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
So,
then,
so
but then,
how have we furthered? Come on, you can do the tail bit. How have
yep.
we furthered conversational leadership? Um, I've given a new definition, maybe furthered a little bit there. Have we furthered the framework? Oh, we got my nest of eggs,
We've got the nest and we've got that third framework that I think is a baby step.
and
I
the
think if
third one.
we,
Okay, yes, indeed.
which I think is your nest, I think that is the third framework.
I quite like the nest.
And if we get that and put some thought into it, then I really think the funny thing is we'll have these three frameworks, which might lead us to we don't need a framework
Of
anymore.
course, this is like the grand what is it in physics? The grand theory, the
Yeah, yeah, some
grand,
other
grand theory of everything, life, the
thing. Yeah,
universe, and everything.
yep.
Life, the universe, and conversation. Sounds like a good title for a book.
Let's do it.
Shall we stop there, John?
Let's stop.